We live in this incredible AI era, right? It's a time of algorithms, predictive models, and just crazy, rapid technological advancement. But here's the thing. Even with all of our cutting-edge tech, human nature, it remains remarkably unchanged. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating ancient tragedy based on the story Eikyo by Atsushi Nakajima. And I want to mention up front, this explainer was created by Hiroko Kano. It's honestly a masterclass in the psychology of power, resentment, and, well, total self-destruction. We're going to dive into the life of Prince Kwai and explore the timeless lessons his spectacular downfall offers us today.
So to understand a really spectacular downfall, we kind of have to look at the catalyst first. And in this case, it was a song. Since the female pig has been sent, why not return the male pig? Now, this was a highly scandalous song sung by local farmers, and it's literally what sets our entire story in motion. The female pig here? That refers to Lady Nanzi. She was the beautiful, extremely cunning wife of the Duke of Wei, and actually the stepmother to our protagonist, Crown Prince Kwai. The male pig was her very public lover from the neighboring state of Song. I mean, everybody knew about this affair. And for Kwai, hearing this song sung by commoners in the streets was just an unbearable public humiliation.
Part 1. A Plot and an Exile.
So, things unravel pretty quickly. Driven by pure shame, Prince Kwai plots to have his stepmother, Lady Nanzi, assassinated. He hires this guy named Shi Yang-su to do the dirty work. But during the meeting where the assassination is actually supposed to go down, the assassin completely gets cold feet. He's hiding behind a curtain, just trembling. Lady Nanzi, being incredibly sharp, notices the prince acting super suspiciously, follows his gaze, and spots the hidden assassin. She immediately bolts, screaming, "The crown prince is going to kill me!" The whole plot is instantly exposed, and to escape his father's absolute wrath, Kwai has to run for his life, totally abandoning his home, his royal status, and his entire family.
Part 2. 17 Years of Bitterness.
Now, you gotta realize this wasn't just some brief timeout. Kwai spends his first year fleeing to the state of Jin. 3 years into this exile, he gets the news that his father has died. He's probably thinking, okay, finally, I can go home and be the duke. But in a massive, shocking twist, the officials back home have crowned his very own son, the boy he left behind, as the new ruler. And it gets worse. His son actually sends an army to block Kwai at the border town of Chi. So Kwai is just stuck. He spends the next 13 years there, literally just staring at the Yellow River. Imagine that for a second. 17 years total of stagnation. Watching your own son rule your kingdom while all your former friends and allies completely ignore you.
The really crucial point here is what that level of isolation does to a person's mind. We see a literal textbook definition of hubris start to take root. Over those long, agonizing years, this privileged, impulsive young prince basically rots into a bitter, resentful, and incredibly cynical middle-aged man. The source material tells us he channeled all of his frustrated ambition into the super dark obsession with cockfighting. He built these lavish coops for the birds, finding a really unhealthy outlet for his repressed aggression and his desperate need for dominance. He wasn't spending this time preparing to be a good leader. Actually, scratch that. He wasn't preparing at all. He was just letting his bitterness ferment.
Part 3. The Vengeful Ruler.
Well, the wheel of fortune always turns, right? And eventually, opportunity knocks. After 17 years, through a pretty daring coup involving his sister and a dramatic midnight raid, Kwai finally seizes the throne. He becomes Duke Zhuang of Wei. But here is the real tragedy of his character. A new ruler should focus on things like diplomacy and internal governance. But Kwai, his entire reign just becomes this massive project of pure vengeance and overcompensation. He doesn't rule, he punishes. He immediately banishes the officials who ignored him. He surrounds himself entirely with sycophants. Basically, he treats his kingdom like a personal piggy bank, trying to buy back the youth and the pleasure he feels he was unfairly robbed of.
Part 4. Cruelty and Hubris.
This unchecked bitterness we've been talking about, it quickly morphs into outright tyranny. Unbound by any sort of moral compass, the new duke's cruelty takes center stage. Consider this specific, frankly terrifying incident. Han Liangfu was a close ally who literally helped Kwai take the throne. Because of this, Kwai had promised to pardon Liangfu of 3 capital offenses as a reward. Sounds great, right? But one day, Kwai son, who clearly shares his father's vicious streak, decides Liangfu is a threat. So, at a banquet, they ambush him. When Liangfu is begging for his life, frantically citing the 3 promised pardons, the crown prince coldly lists out 4 entirely arbitrary crimes: wearing a purple robe, riding a 2-horse chariot, taking his coat off at a dinner, and supposedly plotting against the duke. Before Liangfu can even process that 4th fake charge, he is executed. His blood splashes onto a tiger-patterned tapestry while Duke Kwaikui just sits there watching, pale and totally silent. It is a chilling display of absolute lawless power.
But the human psyche can only suppress so much guilt. As external pressures from neighboring states start mounting, the Duke really begins to crack. He is plagued by this horrifying nightmare. In it, he dreams he's in this desolate field of melons, and up on a ruined tower stands the screaming ghost of Hun Langfu, just shrieking, "What was my crime?" Kwaikui wakes up in a dead sweat, walks out to his balcony and sees a dark, coppery red moon just hanging in the sky. It's ominous. But to distract himself from this terrifying omen, he doesn't reflect or change his ways. He doubles down. He forces his own people into harsh, exhaustive labor projects just so he can build himself more pleasure pavilions.
And this brings us to a seemingly small, passing moment that absolutely seals his fate. While looking out over his city one day, the Duke casually orders a slum of marginalized wrong people to be evicted, literally just because it's ruining his view. As these desperate peasants are being driven out of their homes, he spots a woman with incredibly beautiful long hair. With casual, breathtaking cruelty, he orders his guards to chop her hair off right at the roots, just so he can have it made into a wig for one of his concubines. The woman's husband, a man named Jinshi, wraps a cloak around his humiliated wife and just glares up at the Duke. It is a silent, searing look of pure, unadulterated hatred.
Part 5. An ironic downfall.
That one single act of casual cruelty, that was the spark that ignited the powder keg. The oppressed people, along with his political rivals, finally have had enough. A massive rebellion erupts, and the Duke's forces are completely overwhelmed. Forced to flee into the dark of night, the Duke tries to jump a wall to escape, but falls, severely breaking his leg. But here is the most pathetic, and honestly, the most symbolic detail of this whole story. As he crawls through the pitch-black wilderness, injured and alone, he absolutely refuses to let go of his prized fighting cock. Even when he realizes the bird is dead, he clings to the corpse. It's the ultimate symbol of his hubris, isn't it? Clinging to his toxic pride, even as it literally drags him down into the dirt.
Exhausted, physically broken, and clutching this dead bird, the Duke manages to crawl into a random peasant house, begging for help. The owner steps out of the shadows. And guess who it is? It is Jishi, the exact man's wife the Duke had just mutilated. Panicking, Duke Kwaikui rips off a priceless piece of jade from his clothing and tries to buy his life. And Jishi? He draws his blade, smiles simply, and delivers one of the most chilling lines in history. "If I kill you, will the jade disappear?" And with that one question, the tragic, utterly wasted life of Duke Kwaikui comes to a violent end.
Part 6. Lessons for today. It is a spectacularly poetic ending. But as we pull back and transition to our modern reality, to this fast-paced AI era we live in today, what can we actually take away from a story like this? Well, the core lessons are pretty stark. First off, unchecked bitterness absolutely corrupts the soul. Kwaikui let his 17 years of exile rot him from the inside out. He became the exact monster he felt the world was treating him as. Second, power doesn't create your character, it reveals it. When he finally got the throne, he didn't use it to heal his kingdom or do good. He used it to inflict his own pain onto others. Third, cruelty always has unforeseen consequences. A casual, arrogant order to cut a peasant's hair ended up placing him right in the hands of his executioner. And finally, hubris blinds us to our own fragility. He thought he was untouchable, right up until the moment he was crawling in the dirt with a dead bird.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. In our hyper-connected modern world, where slights and conflicts are constantly amplified by algorithms and social feeds, the core of human conflict remains exactly the same as it was in ancient way. The research compiled by Hiroko Kano really asks us to take a hard look in the mirror. When you're wronged, whether that's in your career, in your relationships, or just in life, do you choose to let bitterness rule your actions, or do you choose to lead with wisdom? Duke Kwaikui chose bitterness, and it cost him his humanity long before it ever cost him his life. How will you choose? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer today, and I truly hope this story leaves you with something profound to reflect on.